From JBS Studios in Greater New York, this is the JBS News Update with Teisha Bader.
I'm Teisha Bader with the JBS News Update for Friday, June the 14th, 2024. Terror group Hamas submitted its formal response on Tuesday to the Israeli proposal on the table that would potentially see the release of Israel's hostages in exchange for hundreds of Palestinian security prisoners and ultimate ceasefire. The terror group saying on Tuesday that it made amendments to the offer, which reportedly go beyond conditions it previously accepted. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke to NBC Today's show's Savannah Guthrie about the Hamas response to the deal and noted all the support for the Israeli proposal from countries around the world, including the Arab world, and from the UN Security Council, which voted earlier this week to approve the deal. And Blinken said the response from Hamas was unfortunately not the yes that we were looking for.
And the response we got was to try to add new conditions to a proposal that everyone else had accepted. So we've got to see now if we can work through those, if we can bridge the gaps that Hamas has created by trying to impose new conditions, including, by the way, coming back on things that it already agreed to. But here's the thing. It took Hamas 12 days to respond, and the world didn't stand still during those 12 days. People continued to suffer during those 12 days. The longer this goes on, the more people will suffer. So Hamas has to demonstrate that it too wants this to end. If it does, we can bring it to an end. If it doesn't, then it means that it wants the war to continue.
Meanwhile, intense fighting continues in Gaza between Israeli troops and Hamas terrorists. And on Tuesday, the IDF said a booby-trapped building collapsed on a number of soldiers, killing 24-year-old Major Tal Shibalisky Shaulov, 20-year-old Staff Sergeant Eitan Karlsbrunn, 19-year-old Sergeant Almog Shalom, and 19-year-old Sergeant Yair Levin. 7 other soldiers were injured. Turning now to northern Israel, which has been under heavy rocket fire from Lebanon by terror group Hezbollah since Tuesday night into Wednesday, the beginning of the Shavuot holiday, when the IDF said approximately 160 projectiles were identified crossing from Lebanon into northern Israel, several falling in various locations, causing fires to break out. The IDF said a number of projectiles were intercepted. Dozens more rockets were fired yesterday at northern Israel, causing raging fires in the north once again. And the IDF said 2 soldiers were lightly and moderately wounded, respectively, as a result of an anti-tank guided missile attack from Lebanon. Today, 2 people were said to have been injured in another barrage of rockets and explosive-laden drones from Lebanon. Hezbollah claiming the attacks are in response to the IDF taking out one of its senior commanders in an airstrike earlier this week. The IDF said that commander was one of the most senior in southern Lebanon who planned, advanced, and carried out a large number of terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians. The IDF continues to defend its northern border and responded to the barrages of rocket attacks and explosive drones hitting Hezbollah terror targets in Lebanon. Several rockets were also launched from Gaza last night at southern Israel at communities along the Gaza border. The IDF saying the air defense fighters intercepted some of the launches. The rest fell in open areas. There were no casualties. Well, turning now to here in the United States and a slew of anti-Semitic incidents on Monday in a so-called day of rage for Gaza across New York City. In Lower Manhattan, outside an exhibit commemorating those massacred at the Nova Music Festival on October the 7th, protesters harassed people going in and out of the exhibit and held banners and chanted threatening slogans justifying the October 7th massacre. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said peaceful protest was a right, but that what happened here went beyond the pale.
Protesters waved Hezbollah and Hamas flags. At other protests, they carried banners reading, "Long live October 7th." And one person even yelled, he wishes, a quote, Hitler was still here. He would have wiped all of you out. These are reprehensible and vile comments. I, and every New Yorker who stands for peace, stand united against them.
And on a New York City subway on Monday, crowds yelled threatening chants against Jews, including saying, "Raise your hands if you're a Zionist. This is your chance to get out." Police were called to the scene. Congressman Richie Torres wrote, "Anyone threatening to purge quote-unquote Zionists, i.e. most Jews, from public places is an anti-Semite, period." And in a separate incident, the home of the director of the Brooklyn Museum, Ann Pasternak, who is Jewish, and the homes of several Jewish board members of the museum were vandalized with red paint, calling Pasternak a quote-unquote white supremacist Zionist. Mayor Adams calling this a crime, saying it's overt, unacceptable anti-Semitism. New York Governor Kathy Hochul also condemned the incident. She said, "We stand with the Jewish community in the face of hate and will continue to fight anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head." U.S. President Joe Biden said today that the horrific acts of anti-Semitism this week, including a demonstration celebrating the October 7th attack, vandalism targeting Jewish homes, and harassment of subway riders, are abhorrent. Anti-Semitism doesn't just threaten Jewish Americans, it threatens all Americans and our fundamental democratic values. Taking a look now at our programming for tonight on JBS for Friday, June the 14th. Live Shabbat services are coming up at 6 o'clock from New York City's Central Synagogue, followed by Shabbat services from the Hampton Synagogue. At 8:30, Justin Pine speaks with Yael Ziegler, author of Ruth, From Alienation to Monarchy, to discuss why most Jewish communities read the book of Ruth on Shavuot and explore the story's meaning and relevance today. That's followed by sisters Danielle and Galeet Dardashti speaking with Abigail Pogrebin. Then it's David Harris on Defending Israel. At 10:30, a replay of the Hampton services, followed by a replay from Central. And coming up next, a look at this week's Torah Portion. And that's the JBS News Update for Friday, June the 14th, 2024. I'm Teisha Bader, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. Am Yisrael Chai.